Hi, boys and girls. This is Ms. Kathy. I'm so happy you've joined me today for another story just for you. Maria's Own World. What are we going to do tomorrow? Maria Vargas asked as she got ready for bed. Since Christmas was over and her new toys didn't seem so new anymore, Maria thought the next day might be boring. Don't you need to work on your science fair project? Mrs. Vargas asked. Your teacher told me that the fair was coming up soon. What should I do? Maria wondered out loud. Make a poster like I did last year? Think about it before you go to sleep, her mom suggested. But remember to read your Sabbath school lesson first. Maria opened her lesson. It's about God creating the world. Now that would have been a great science project. Mrs. Vargas laughed. You know, that's not a bad idea. Maria raised one eyebrow. It's a good idea, Mom. It's just a little more homework than I wanted to do during this vacation. No, I mean you could make a globe. You know, a round ball painted like the world. Maria liked that idea. I could paint on all the mountains and rivers, and, wait a minute, how would I make it round? We could use a balloon, Mrs. Vargas answered. Maria nodded. We could use a balloon. Mom, how could I paint on a balloon? It would pop. Mrs. Vargas laughed. I'll show you tomorrow. Now finish your lesson, go to sleep. Maria mumbled to herself as she settled down under her covers. Paint on a balloon. Why couldn't she show me tonight? What could we do? Wrap the balloon with drawing paper? She was still mumbling about it when she went to sleep. The next morning after breakfast, Mrs. Vargas got out her mixing bowl. Now, Maria, I'll show you how to make a world. Mix this flour in with that water. Maria looked at her. Are you sure? The last time I did something like this, I got in trouble. Go ahead, mix it up. Maria mixed. When Mrs. Vargas told her to stop, she washed her hands and waited for the next instructions. Now run to your room and get one of those red balloons we didn't use at Yo-Yo's birthday party. Maria shook her head, but she ran and brought the balloon to the kitchen. Before long, she was out in the living room. Dad, are you through with the newspaper? He nodded as he turned the last page. I am now. Can I have it? Mr. Vargas smiled. Are you looking for science project ideas? Maria shrugged her shoulders. No, I just want to tear it into shreds. What? Maria laughed. Hey, don't blame me. It was Mom's idea. It's called paper maché, Mrs. Vargas said from the doorway. She held up the fat red balloon. Now, start ripping up that paper before the paste dries. She showed Maria how to tear the paper into skinny strips. Put the last full newspaper pages on the table to protect it. We'll put the balloon there. Then we'll dip the strips into the flour and water paste. Maria watched while she slipped one strip under the oozing sticky stuff. It came out all slimy. Mom, that's gross. Just watch. She slapped the wet paper onto the red balloon. It stuck to the surface. Now you do it, and keep doing it until you can't see red anymore. Okay, Maria said. She dipped another strip into the paste. Ew, it's yucky. But as she slapped the strip against the balloon, she smiled. I like it. Before long, the balloon was covered. Now we'll wait until it dries, Mrs. Vargas said. I still don't think this is going to work, Maria said. It's too mushy and much too wet to paint. An hour later, Maria changed her mind. Tap, tap. Look, Mom, it's hard. Very good, Mrs. Vargas said. Now put on another layer of paper strips. Maria slapped the strips on. She slapped on 3 more layers that afternoon. Finally, after supper, it was finished. I'm going to paint the oceans first, Maria said as she got out the blue paint container and a map. She worked hard, and before long, gray land was surrounded by water on her world. She was painting South America brown when her brother came in. What is that? He asked. And why is it on the table? It's my world, Maria said. I made it from a balloon. A balloon? Chris asked. Let's see what happens if it pops. He reached for a fork and Maria screamed. Mom, Chris is trying to pop my world. Mrs. Vargas arrived in time to stop the disaster. Chris, leave your sister's world alone. Maria, stop shouting. It won't hurt to pop the balloon now. When the paste dried on the paper, it formed a shell around the balloon. You can stick in a pin and let the air out if you want. Yo-Yo came in as her sister was poking the world with a pin. "What is it, Maria? What did you make?" "I made a world," Maria said. Yo-Yo was puzzled. "What did you make it out of?" She tapped the gray shell. "What's inside of it?" Maria frowned. "Well, it was a balloon, but I let the air out of that. There's nothing inside now." Yo-Yo stared for a minute. When Mr. Vargas stepped in, she ran to him. "Daddy, Maria made a world out of nothing." He raised one eyebrow and looked at Maria. "That's quite a trick." Maria rolled her eyes. "I just made a globe of the world out of paper maché. Now I'm painting in all the countries and stuff." She painted the North Pole white. "This is fun. I wonder what God felt like when He created the world. I would have liked deciding where to put the rivers and lakes." "It would be great to think up all the animals and plants to put on a new world," Chris said. Mrs. Vargas smiled. "I think God felt a lot like you feel now. I think He likes creating beautiful things. That's one of the ways we are the most like God. We like to create things too." "Like papier-mâché worlds," Maria agreed. "Like forts and tree houses," Chris added. "Like children," Mr. Vargas said with a smile. Yo-Yo wanted to say something too. "Like when I make a mess in my room?" Everyone had to laugh about that. "Mom, can I take my world to the shoebox this Sabbath?" Maria asked. "Since our lesson is about creation, I want to show everyone the world I created. Out of nothing." Questions. Number 1. Do you like to make things? Then you're like God too. Number 2. Which part of God's created world do you like best? Number 3. If you could create a world, what would it look like? Number 4. Isn't it nice to know that the same God who created the world out of nothing is your friend?
The story you have heard today is from the Shoebox Kids Bible Stories, written by Jerry D. Thomas and used with permission from the Pacific Press Publishing Association. If you're interested in any other books published by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, please visit AdventistBookCenter.com or call 1-800-765-6955.
This podcast is a production of the Carolina Conference of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.